First contact. The emergency beacon screamed its warning as Lieutenant Marcus Chen fought with the controls of his reconnaissance craft. The planet below rushed up to meet him, its crimson atmosphere burning against his heat shields. His last coherent thought before impact was a prayer to whatever gods might be listening in this uncharted corner of the galaxy. Marcus woke to pain. Every nerve in his body protested as he pushed himself up from the twisted metal that had once been his pilot's seat. The acrid smell of burned circuitry filled his nostrils. Through the cracked canopy, he could see an alien landscape painted in shades of purple and gold. Twin suns blazed overhead, casting long shadows through vegetation that looked like a cross, between Earth's ferns and something from a fever dream. His emergency kit had survived the crash, a small mercy in what seemed like an ocean of problems. Marcus took inventory: broken ribs, possible concussion, and a deep gash along his left thigh. The first aid supplies would help, but he needed shelter, water, and a way to signal for rescue. His distress beacon was functioning, but who knew how long it would take for a rescue team to reach this system's outer rim? The forest around him whispered with alien life. Bioluminescent insects drifted between the trees like living stars. Something large rustled in the undergrowth, and Marcus instinctively reached for his sidearm. The movement sent fresh waves of pain through his chest. He had managed to fashion a crude shelter from wreckage and native plants when the predator found him. It moved like liquid shadow, all sleek muscle and too many teeth. 6 legs carried, its serpentine body with terrifying grace. Multiple eyes fixed on Marcus with the cold calculation of an apex predator evaluating prey. Marcus raised his weapon, knowing he had perhaps 3 shots before the power cell died. The creature circled, testing his defenses. When it lunged, he rolled aside, feeling his broken ribs scream in protest. His first shot went wide. The second grazed its hide, earning an otherworldly shriek that made his teeth ache. The predator coiled for another strike. Marcus steadied his aim, prepared to make his last shot count. Then something massive burst from the tree line. The newcomer stood nearly 8 feet tall, covered in dense fur that shifted from deep brown to black. Powerful muscles rippled beneath the coat as it moved. But it was the face that made Marcus's breath catch. Humanoid in structure but with pronounced fangs, cat-like eyes that glowed amber in the twilight, and features that spoke of both beauty and primal power. The Beastwoman launched herself at the predator with a roar that shook the trees. Claws extended from her fingertips, each one as long as Marcus's thumb. The 2 aliens clashed in a whirlwind of violence that made Marcus's military combat training look like a child's game. The predator fought viciously, but the Beastwoman was stronger, faster, and fought with intelligent precision. She dodged strikes that should have been lethal, countered with brutal efficiency. Within moments, she had the creature pinned, her fangs at its throat. A quick twist, a wet snap, and the threat was eliminated. She rose slowly, her chest heaving. Blood, purple and viscous, dripped from her claws. When she turned to face Marcus, he saw intelligence in those amber eyes, not just animal instinct. She approached cautiously, nostrils flaring as she scented him. Marcus kept his weapon lowered but ready. The Beastwoman circled him once, twice, then made a sound that might have been approval. She gestured at his injuries, then at the dead predator, and finally into the forest. The meaning was clear: come with me or become prey for something else. Given the choice between following a seemingly intelligent alien who had saved his life and waiting for another predator to find him, Marcus chose to follow. The Beastwoman moved through the forest with practiced ease, occasionally glancing back to ensure he was keeping up. His injuries made the journey agony, but he pressed on. Her home was a cave system built into a cliff face, the entrance concealed by hanging vines and carefully arranged stones. Inside, the caves had been transformed into a living space. Furs covered the floors, bioluminescent plants provided soft light, and various tools and weapons hung from the walls. It was primitive by human standards, but showed clear signs of intelligence and culture. The Beastwoman guided him to a pile of furs near a small fire pit. She examined his injuries with surprising gentleness, her clawed fingers careful not to cause additional damage. She disappeared deeper into the caves and returned with what looked like medicinal herbs and clean water. As she tended his wounds, Marcus studied her more closely. Her features, while alien, held a strange beauty. The fur covering her body was meticulously groomed. Intricate scars decorated her arms and shoulders, not battle wounds but deliberate markings that suggested cultural significance. She wore simple leather garments and jewelry made from bones and stones. Communication proved challenging. Marcus tried speaking, but she showed no recognition of his words. She responded with a complex series of growls, purrs, and gestures that he couldn't interpret. When he pantomimed eating, she seemed to understand. She left and returned with meat, raw, bloody, and still warm from a fresh kill. She placed it before him expectantly, taking a piece herself and tearing into it with her fangs to demonstrate. Marcus's stomach turned. He shook his head, pushing the meat away. The Beastwoman's expression shifted to confusion, then concern. She growled low in her throat, pushing the meat back toward him. When he refused again, her growl deepened. She stood, looming over him, and bared her fangs. For a moment, Marcus feared he had mortally offended her. Instead, she crouched before him and took his face in her clawed hands with surprising gentleness. She opened her own mouth, showing her fangs, then pointed at his blunt, human teeth. Understanding dawned in her eyes. She'd been trying to feed him the way her people ate, not realizing human needs were different. Over the following days, a pattern emerged. The Beastwoman, whom Marcus mentally named Kira for lack of a better term, would hunt each morning. She would return with fresh kills, offering the choicest portions to Marcus. When he refused the raw meat, she would growl in frustration, but never became truly aggressive. Marcus tried to show her how to cook meat using the fire, but she seemed repulsed by the idea. To her, cooking appeared to ruin perfectly good food. Still, she began bringing him fruits and plants as well, watching carefully to see which ones he would eat. Their communication improved gradually. Marcus learned that her growls had different meanings: frustration, concern, approval, warning. She began to understand his gestures and facial expressions. When he drew pictures in the dirt, she studied them intently, sometimes adding her own marks. One evening, after another failed attempt to get him to eat raw meat, Kira sat beside him with what could only be described as a huff of exasperation. She had brought him a particularly large catch, something that looked like a cross between a deer and a reptile. The meat was fresh, carefully cleaned, and presented almost ceremonially. When Marcus shook his head apologetically, she didn't growl this time. Instead, she pointed at the meat, then at him, then flexed her own impressive muscles. The message was clear. Meat makes you strong. She was trying to help him heal, to make him powerful like her people. Marcus touched his chest, then pointed at the fire, trying to explain that humans needed cooked food. Kira watched intently as he speared a piece of meat on a stick and held it over the flames. When the outside began to brown and the smell of cooking meat filled the cave, her nose wrinkled in disgust. But when Marcus took a bite and showed clear satisfaction, something clicked in her alien features. She might not understand why he ruined perfectly good meat with fire, but she began to grasp that he needed it that way. From then on, she would bring him fresh kills and watch with poorly concealed distaste as he cooked them. Sometimes she would growl softly, clearly believing he was weakening himself with this strange practice. But she never stopped providing for him, never stopped trying to care for this strange, fragile creature who had fallen from the sky. As Marcus's injuries slowly healed under her care, he began to see past the fearsome exterior to the intelligent, caring being beneath. Kira was fierce, yes, but also curious, protective, and surprisingly gentle. When storms rolled through the mountains, she would ensure he was warm and dry. When predators prowled too close to the cave, she would stand guard through the night. Their first major breakthrough came when Marcus successfully taught her a simple gesture for thank you. Her eyes had widened with understanding, and she had repeated the gesture back to him. From that moment, their communication became a priority for both of them. building understanding. The morning sun painted the cave entrance in shades of gold and crimson when Marcus woke to find Kira crouched beside him, holding another offering of raw meat. Her amber eyes held an expression he was beginning to recognize as hopeful expectation. 3 weeks had passed since his crash, and while his ribs still ached, the gash on his thigh had healed remarkably well under her care. Marcus sat up carefully, making the gesture they had established for "thank you," followed by their sign for fire. Kyra's ears flattened slightly, the equivalent of an eye roll he had learned, but she didn't growl. Progress. As he prepared his morning meal, Marcus pulled out his data pad. Its power was limited, but he had been using it sparingly to document their growing lexicon of gestures. The device fascinated Kira. She would sit for hours watching him work, occasionally reaching out to touch the screen with careful claw tips. Today, Marcus decided to try something new. He activated the pad's drawing function and sketched a simple picture of himself, then pointed at his chest. Next, he drew Kira, capturing her distinctive features as best he could. Her eyes widened with recognition. She took the stylus in her clawed hand, holding it awkwardly but with determination. Her first attempts were clumsy lines, but soon she managed a recognizable figure, herself. Then, surprising Marcus, she drew another figure beside her self-portrait. This one was smaller, without the pronounced fangs and claws. A child. Kira had drawn a child. She pointed at the small figure, then at herself, and made a gesture Marcus hadn't seen before. Both, hands pressed to her chest then extended outward. The meaning hit him like a physical blow. She had lost a child. The raw emotion in her amber eyes transcended species barriers. Marcus reached out slowly, placing his hand over hers. She didn't pull away. For a long moment, they sat in shared understanding. Grief, it seemed, was universal. This breakthrough opened new channels of communication. Kira began sharing more complex concepts through drawings and elaborate pantomimes. Marcus learned that her people, she drew groups of beings, like herself, lived in clan structures throughout the mountain ranges. But Kira was alone. Through gestures and expressions of sorrow, she conveyed that she was an outcast, though the reason remained unclear. Their hunting expeditions became a daily routine. Marcus had fashioned a spear from salvaged metal and native wood, while Kira relied on her natural weapons. She was amused by his need for tools but seemed impressed when his thrown spear brought down a small prey animal. From a distance, her claws couldn't reach. One afternoon, while tracking a herd of the deer-like creatures, Kira suddenly tensed. Her fur bristled and a low growl rumbled from her chest. She pushed Marcus behind a boulder, then pointed at the ground. There, barely visible in the soft earth, were tracks, similar to hers but larger. Another of her kind, a male judging by the size. Kira's agitation was palpable. She urged Marcus back toward their cave with increasing urgency. They had nearly reached the safety of the cliff face when a figure emerged from the tree line. The male was massive, easily a foot taller than Kira, with gray-streaked fur and scars crisscrossing his chest. He carried a crude but effective-looking axe. When he spotted Marcus, his eyes narrowed to slits. The confrontation was brief but intense. The male advanced, clearly viewing Marcus as either prey or a threat. Kira stepped between them, her own, fangs bared, growling in what sounded like complex vocalizations. Their language, Marcus realized. The male responded with equally complex sounds, gesturing aggressively at Marcus. Kira stood her ground. When the male moved to circle around her, she matched him step for step, keeping herself between him and Marcus. The standoff continued for several tense minutes before the male finally backed away, though his posture remained threatening. He vanished into the forest, but Marcus could feel his presence lingering like a storm cloud. That night, Kira was restless. She paced the cave entrance, occasionally pausing to sniff the air. When Marcus tried to ask what was wrong through their limited gestures, she drew more figures in the dirt, many of her kind, all facing their cave. The message was clear. Others might come. Marcus activated his emergency beacon again, hoping desperately that someone, somewhere, was listening. The power indicator showed less than 20% remaining. He needed to be strategic about its use. Over the following days, their communication system grew more sophisticated. Marcus taught Kira basic mathematical concepts, which she grasped with surprising speed. She, in turn, showed him how to read weather patterns in the behavior of local fauna and the color of the evening sky. It was during one of these lessons that the storm struck. The weather on this planet was unlike anything. In Marcus's experience, the sky turned a sickly green color, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with electrical energy. Kira had been tracking the signs all day, growing increasingly agitated as the atmospheric pressure dropped. She guided Marcus to the deepest part of the cave system, where she had stockpiled supplies. Fresh water in carved stone basins, dried meat, Marcus had taught her to smoke it for preservation, and bundles of the fibrous plants she used for bedding. The storm hit with the force of a starship's main gun. Lightning, if the brilliant or purple energy discharges could be called that, struck the mountainside repeatedly. The thunder was a physical force that Marcus felt in his bones. Rain fell in sheets so thick they looked solid, and the wind howled with a voice that seemed almost sentient. Kira curled around Marcus protectively as the cave shook. Rocks fell from the ceiling and water began seeping through cracks in the stone. She guided him to a natural shelf formation higher up the cave wall, keeping him above the rising water. For hours, they huddled together as the planet seemed to tear itself apart around them. Marcus found himself oddly calm, trusting in Kira's experience with these storms. She had survived them before. She would keep them both alive now. When dawn finally broke, the landscape had been transformed. Trees lay scattered like matchsticks, new streams cut through previously dry ground, and the air smelled of ozone and destruction. But they had survived. As they emerged to survey the damage, Marcus spotted something that made his heart race. Partially buried in storm debris was a metallic glint, wreckage but not from his ship. This was older, the metal corroded but still recognizable as human manufacture. They excavated it carefully. It was an escape pod, its markings identifying it as belonging to the survey ship Endeavor, lost in this sector over 2 years ago. The Yao pod was damaged beyond repair, but some systems might still function. Inside, they found the remains of the pilot, long since claimed by the planet's harsh environment. But the communication array, protected by hardened casing, showed signs of life. With power from his own emergency supplies, Marcus might be able to boost his distress signal significantly. As he worked on the equipment, Kira watched with intelligent interest. She had seen him repair devices before, had learned to hand him tools when he pointed. Now she anticipated his needs, providing assistance without being asked. The work took days. Marcus had to cannibalize parts from both his own damaged ship and the escape pod. Kira helped him transport components, her strength making easy work of loads that would have required multiple trips for a human. During a break in the work, sitting by their evening fire, Marcus tried to explain what he was doing. Through drawings and gestures, he conveyed the concept of calling for help, of others of his kind coming to find him. Kira's expression was unreadable as she processed this information. That night, she was quiet. She prepared his food without her usual grumbling about cooking, then sat beside him staring into the flames. When Marcus touched her arm questioningly, she drew new figures in the dirt. Him, his ship, other humans coming to take him away. Then, with careful deliberation, she drew herself. Alone again. The realization hit Marcus like a physical blow. In focusing on rescue, on returning to his own kind, he hadn't considered what would happen to Kira. She had saved him, cared for him, taught him. She had shared her grief, her knowledge, her home, and he was preparing to leave her. Marcus drew new figures, himself and Kira together. A ship, both of them inside it. He pointed at her, at himself, then at the stars visible through the cave entrance. Could she come with him? The hope that bloomed in her amber eyes was answer enough. But they both knew. It wouldn't be that simple. His people feared the unknown. Her people, those who had cast her out, would never understand. Yet as they sat by the fire, planning possibilities through pictures and gestures, Marcus felt something he hadn't expected in this alien wilderness, hope for a future neither of them could have imagined alone. Bonds beyond worlds, the morning mist clung to the valley like a shroud when the hunting party found them. Marcus had been adjusting the makeshift communication array while Kira foraged for breakfast. The first warning was her sudden return, moving, with the fluid urgency that meant danger. 6 of her kind emerged from the tree line, armed with spears and crude energy weapons that looked scavenged from crashed vessels. Unlike the lone male they had encountered weeks ago, this was an organized group. Their leader, a scarred female with silver-streaked fur, stepped forward. The conversation that followed was rapid fire in Kira's native language. Marcus couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Accusation, anger, demand. Kira stood her ground, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her claws reflexively extended and retracted. When the leader pointed at Marcus and made a gesture he recognized as aggressive intent, Kira's response was immediate. She moved to block their approach, her growl deep and threatening. The standoff escalated quickly. 2 hunters circled to flank them while the leader continued her verbal assault. Marcus's hand moved to his repaired sidearm, now powered by cells, from the salvaged escape pod. The movement drew the hunter's attention. One raised a spear, the tip crackling with some form of energy enhancement. That's when Kira exploded into motion. Her attack was swift and decisive, targeting the spear wielder first. She disarmed him with a move that spoke of military training, then spun to face the flanking hunters. But she was outnumbered, and these were skilled warriors of her own kind. Marcus reacted on instinct. His first shot was a warning, the energy beam scorching the ground between Kira and her nearest attacker. The hunters froze, startled by the human weapon. He used their hesitation to move to Kira's side, weapon raised but not directly threatening. "Back off," he said, knowing they couldn't understand his words but hoping his tone carried the message. He activated his translator program, though it had limited samples of their language. The device managed a rough approximation. "No fight. Peace." The leader's eyes narrowed. She responded with a string of words the translator partially caught. Human, forbidden law, exile. Through Kira's gestures and the translator's fragments, Marcus pieced together the situation. Kira had been exiled for some transgression. By sheltering him, an alien and outsider, she had broken additional laws. The hunting party wasn't just here for him. They were here to enforce judgment on her. The leader raised her weapon. Marcus saw Kira tense, ready to fight to the death. But he had another idea. Moving slowly, he pulled out his data pad and activated the holographic display. The 3D projection of star charts appeared in the air between them. The hunters recoiled, then leaned forward with obvious curiosity. Technology like this was beyond their current level. Marcus manipulated the display, showing their planet, then zooming out to show the vast network of human colonized systems. He pointed at himself, then at the stars. The translator managed, "Many my kind, coming soon." It wasn't a threat exactly, but the implication was clear. Harm him or Kira, and they would face consequences from a technologically superior civilization. The leader's expression shifted from aggressive to calculating. She lowered her weapon and spoke again. This time the translator caught more. "Why, protect, exile?" Marcus looked at Kira, then back at the leader. He pulled up images on his pad, his crash, Kira saving him from predators, teaching him to survive. He had documented everything initially for scientific record. Now it became their defense. "She save me," the translator managed. "Friend, not enemy." The hunting party exchanged glances. Their leader seemed torn between duty and pragmatism. Finally, she made a gesture Marcus recognized as dismissive. But her next words, translated roughly, chilled him. Sunfall. Judgment. Both. They left, but the threat was clear. By sunfall, perhaps 6 hours away, there would be a reckoning. Kyra's agitation was palpable as she paced the cave. She drew frantic images in the dirt. Many warriors, weapons, death. She pointed at Marcus, then at his communication equipment, making urgent gestures. He understood. Call your people now. Marcus worked feverishly to complete the array modifications. The salvaged parts were compatible but required delicate calibration. Kira helped where she could, holding components steady while he made connections. As the afternoon wore on, shadows lengthening ominously, he finally achieved a stable signal boost. The emergency beacon lit up with 5 times its previous strength. His distress call, now powered by the combined energy cells, would reach any human vessel within 3 systems. But would it be heard in time? As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold, they saw them coming. Not just a hunting party this time, a war band. 20 or more of Kira's kind, armed and moving with military precision, up the cliff paths. Kira pushed Marcus toward the cave's rear exit, a narrow passage that led to higher ground. She had shown it to him weeks ago as an emergency escape route. But when he moved to follow her, she stopped him with a gentle hand. On his chest, her meaning was clear. She would hold them off while he escaped. Marcus shook his head firmly. He pulled out his sidearm, checked the charge, then drew his salvaged combat knife. The gesture transcended language barriers. They would face this together. The first wave came at sunset. Warriors rushed the cave entrance while others scaled the cliff face. Kira met them with savage efficiency, her intimate knowledge of the terrain giving her an advantage. Marcus provided cover fire, his energy weapon causing chaos in their ranks. But they kept coming. For every warrior that fell back, 2 more seemed to take their place. Marcus's power cells wouldn't last forever. They were being overwhelmed. That's when the sky lit up, a brilliant streak of fire carved across the darkening heavens. Then another. Drop pods. Marcus recognized them immediately. His distress call had been heard. The drop pods impacted with earth-shaking force in the valley below. Armored human soldiers emerged, weapons at the ready. The universal translator built into their combat suits immediately began broadcasting. This is the UES Recovery Team 7. Cease hostilities immediately. The warband hesitated, caught between their quarry and this new threat. Their leader, the silver-furred female from before, stepped forward. She pointed at Kira and spoke. The human commander's translator processed her words. This one is exile. She harbors the alien. Both must face judgment by our law. The human commander, identified by his suit as Captain Rivera, turned to Marcus. Lieutenant Chen, you're a hard man to find. What's the situation here? Marcus holstered his weapon and stepped forward, Kira beside him. Sir, this is Kira. She saved my life, taught me to survive. She's been exiled by her people for helping me. They want to execute us both. Rivera's expression was unreadable behind his visor. And you're defending an alien against her own kind? She's not just an alien, sir. She's... Marcus paused, searching for the right words. She's shown more humanity than most humans I know. She took me in, cared for me, shared everything she had. I won't abandon her now. The standoff stretched taut. 3 groups, human soldiers, Kira's people, and in the middle, 2 beings who had found understanding across species lines. Captain Rivera made a decision that would later be studied in xenopsychology textbooks across human space. He opened a general communication channel. Attention. I am Captain Rivera of the United Earthship Reliant. We're here to recover our crew member. However, we're also interested in establishing peaceful contact with your species. He gestured to Marcus and Kira. These 2 have proven that our kinds can coexist, can learn from each other. Lieutenant Chen reports that this individual saved his life, provided medical care, and shared resources. This represents exactly the kind of interspecies cooperation we hope to achieve. The silver-furred leader listened to the translation. Her expression skeptical. Your words are pleasant, human. But she broke our laws, sheltered an outsider, shared secrets of survival sacred to our people. And in doing so, Rivera continued, she's opened the door to something greater. We have technology to share, medical advances that could help your people. In return, your knowledge of this planet, your survival skills, could benefit human colonists. Marcus felt Kira tense beside him. He took her clawed hand in his, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by either group. Sir, with permission, I'd like to add something. Rivera nodded. Marcus stepped forward, addressing both groups. Kira was exiled for showing compassion, for choosing mercy over tradition. On Earth, we have a saying, the highest form of intelligence is empathy. She demonstrated that. She saw past our differences to what connects us. He pulled out his data pad, showing the journal entries, the drawings they had made together, the gestural language they had developed. In 3 months, we've built more understanding than most first contact scenarios achieve in years. Not through technology or formal protocols, but through simple kindness. The silver-furred leader studied the images. Her warriors murmured among themselves. Finally, she spoke. You would take the exile with you? Marcus looked at Kira. If she's willing, yes. But more than that, we propose an exchange. Some of your people come with us to learn about human culture. Some humans remain here to learn from you. Voluntary on both sides. The negotiation that followed lasted hours. Rivera's diplomatic training proved invaluable as they worked through concerns about technology transfer, cultural contamination, and territorial rights. Kira served as an impromptu translator, her unique position bridging both worlds. By dawn, an agreement was reached. Kira's exile would be commuted to ambassador status. She would travel with Marcus to human space, learning and teaching. In return, a small group of her people would accompany them, while human researchers would establish a peaceful outpost with the clan's permission. As the sun rose over the valley, painting the alien landscape in familiar warm hues, Marcus and Kira stood together watching the human dropship prepare for departure. Her few possessions were already aboard, including samples of the medicinal plants she had used to heal his wounds. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked, knowing she couldn't understand the words but hoping his tone conveyed the meaning. Kira looked at him with those intelligent amber eyes. She made the gesture they had created for together, then pointed at the stars. The meaning was clear. As they boarded the dropship, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them here. He had crashed as a pilot and was leaving as an ambassador. Kira had saved a stranger and found a future beyond exile. The dropship lifted off, carrying them toward the orbiting starship. Below, the alien landscape receded, but it was no longer truly alien to Marcus. It was the place where two worlds had met, where understanding had bridged an impossible gap. In his final log entry before departure, Marcus wrote, First contact isn't about technology or protocols, it's about connection, about finding the common ground that exists between all sentient beings. Kira taught me that. She taught me that humanity isn't exclusive to humans, and that sometimes the most profound connections come from the most unexpected places. As the starship prepared for jump, Kira stood beside him at the observation deck, watching her world shrink to a point of light. Her hand found his, claws carefully retracted. Together they faced the stars and the unknown future that awaited them both. The journey to Earth would take weeks. There would be challenges, cultural misunderstandings, fear from both species, political complications. But as Marcus looked at Kira, he saw not an alien but a partner, a friend, a bridge between worlds. She turned to him and made their gesture for thank you, followed by the one for trust. Marcus responded with together and future. As the jump drive engaged and stars streaked into lines of light, Marcus smiled. He had left Earth as a soldier. He was returning as something more. A living example that understanding could transcend any barrier. That connection was possible between any two beings willing to reach past their differences. The story of the human pilot and the fanged alien Beastwoman would become legend in xenological circles. But for Marcus and Kira, it was simpler than that. It was the story of two individuals who chose compassion over fear, understanding over ignorance, and in doing so, changed the course of two civilizations. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor about bringing beings together, and sometimes, just sometimes, that was exactly what was needed to bridge the impossible gulf between the stars.